left stateless. Last week, the Israeli Supreme Court announced that it may revoke the citizenship of people found guilty of espionage, treason, or terrorism. This was a response to an older request from Israel's Interior Ministry to remove Israeli citizenship to two convicted terrorists, Mohammed Mafaraja and Alaa Ziud. Whilst the court also ruled that if they have no other citizenship, they would be allowed to reside in Israel, this sets a new precedent, similar to the UK's removal of former ISIS bride Shamima Begum's citizenship, or the US denaturalizing former Nazi war criminals living in the country. But is the new precedent a dangerous one to be set? Would it be better to segregate and isolate these criminals, or rehabilitate and integrate them back into society? Should Israel be keeping their friends close and enemies closer, or strip those enemies of their rights? Should the government revoke the citizenship of terrorists?
So, dear panelists, you know the rules. You get 30 seconds to lay out your initial stance, and we pick up the debate right after with our first question, of course, being, should the government revoke the citizenship of terrorists? Dr. Alomari, please take the lead.
Yeah, hello everyone. Well, I think this is very political. This is really useless and futile. The Supreme Court should have better things to do. Also the concept of citizenship has become lately all over the world something that you can give and take away for political reasons. It's not viewed as a right that you have because of birth or because of a connection to a country. I think this is very political. This is very sad, and it ignores facts and ignores the reality of terrorism and what it means.
Well, we'll put a stopper there, but pick up on all the topics you have mentioned in a second. Dr. Alomari, Noor, your take, please.
Indeed, this decision was not a government actual decision. It actually was a Supreme Court decision. Government appealed this decision, and the Judiciary ruled out and in favor of the government. I think this decision is an international decision. Like our UK government take this decision, hard but unpleasant decision, to revoke the Shamima Begum's residency and citizenship. Even though the Bangladesh said that if the Shamima Begum entered Bangladesh, she will face a death penalty. This is why Shamima Begum cannot enter Bangladesh, neither she can back to there. So I think this decision should have taken ages ago. It's an international decision, not only the Israeli decision.
Right, and you rightfully mentioned that it's not the court deciding as such, but simply not overruling the parliament legislation on that. Last but not least, Mr. Eviatar, your take?
I think it's very simply. I don't think that there is any question about that. Israel as a state, as a democratic state, has all tools, if you want, the democratic tools, I emphasize, to prevent any terror actions, especially which come from the internal citizens. And this is part of the steps, and I think that the legal confirmed is necessary, and Israel should continue and to go for that for the next and the security circumstances.
Right. So, gentlemen, please feel free to interact from this point onward, and I would like us to begin with the point Noor mentioned, that the Supreme Court, again, did not decide that, but simply did not overrule the legislator here, and which brings us once again to this long-standing debate when it comes to national security. Who should have the final say, the judiciary or the parliament, Dr. Alomari?
Well, I think it should be the parliament. And, the judicial, we have seen how the judicial in the U.S., for example, and recently has come under fire for imposing its agenda. So just because it's the Supreme Court doesn't mean that it's not politicized. Right. The Supreme Court is politicized. And I think in this case, the Israeli government itself is appealing to, right-wingers who want to see some action taken against terrorism. And the minute you say terrorism, everybody is against it. However, terrorism used to mean something bad. Now it's politicized. Neighbors are calling each other terrorists for no reason. Governments are calling their enemies, political enemies, terrorists. Everybody has become a terrorist when it used to be something that everybody agreed on what it meant, and that is killing someone for their faith, unprovoked, for no reason other than their belief in a God. Now it has become ridiculous. It has been politicized, and everybody is a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer. And boy, that is taking everybody off the point of dealing with the roots of terrorism and dealing with terrorists. So this is really very unfortunate for the state of Israel, as well as the American government, whose politicians have slipped into using terrorists to mean anybody that I disagree with.
Right, and terminology is not merely symbolic, but it has far-reaching ramifications on our reality, and we'll get back to that in a second. But you know, some are saying that the courts not overruling the legislation is not enough, because the situation is that they will be granted, the petitioners, the terrorists, they will be granted residency status, a permanent residency status, and some are suggesting that it's some sort of a situation in which you eat the cake and have it too. Mr. Eviatar, do you agree?
Well, I say earlier that while we are speaking about revoke citizenship, it sounds for those who are not dealing with this problem like something huge and crucial. I want to emphasize, revoke citizenship, it means to prevent the right to for voting and to be elected to the Knesset. That's all, and not holding passport, not something else.
Meaning all the social rights, etc., are still being provided.
Of course, Israel, as a democratic state, does not prevent any. If you want rights like salaries or benefits which come from the national security to the children, Israel will not destroy the houses, will not prevent any rights which are dealing with the economic situation and so on. We are speaking just about voting, and I think it's just a symbolic step, and it's a part of the tools that democratic states can allow itself to do. While we are dealing with terror which comes from the internal citizens, it's quite different from terror which comes from outside. And democratic state should defend itself with another tools. This is part of them. And I think that it's a logic, and I would say that it's a long process. It's not easy, but I think that every democratic state in the world should do the same step, and I don't think that we have another scenario.
Dr. Alomari, I see that you have something to say.
Yeah, I mean, if you are not taking anything away from them, if it's symbolic, why do it? Why aren't the existing laws of putting someone in jail for life? Why is that not enough? Why do you, if it's not destroying their lives, if it's not affecting them, if it's not affecting society, then why take the trouble of doing it? And there are a lot of problems, by the way. This law is a two-way street. Are you willing to take away citizenship from Israeli Jews who commit crimes against Arabs? Isn't that also turning against the state? You see, this is a slippery slope. Before you know it, you will be taking the citizenship of a minority of Jews who might in the future, Israeli Jews, who might in the future commit these crimes. And then that affects their children. If they have a child, then they cannot give their children their citizenship. So you see where this is going? This is a slippery slope. This is a small group of individuals who commit these crimes. They go to jail. They rot in jail sometimes. They do not participate in society for a very long time. And now you're going through all of this, taking all this effort to, to punish two individuals and to alter the natural right of both Arabs and Jews who live in Israel to, hold that citizenship, which is even which is meaningful to Jews as well as Arabs who live in the state of Israel.
So, Mr. Dahri, what do you think? We can add to this those measures, the issue of death penalty, the issue of demolition of houses, eviction of families. If it is not deterring terrorists from pursuing terror acts? Are we talking mere vengeance?
I think if you look at the UK doesn't have a death penalty. It's because of the culture of terrorism and culture of the society is completely different than the culture of the Israeli society. Israeli society is living under the arms, under the terrorism. And in that case, the UK is completely different, right? Even the US has a death penalty. They may exercise sometimes or sometimes not. I think the death penalty, number one, the death penalty in Israel is a crucial time to, it should be restored again, because there's no point, because in a prison system they have given Israel prison system are facilitating the terrorists. They are enjoying every rights in the prisons. There's no death penalty in Israel, right? And now they are revoking nationalities, but you are having the same rights of permanent residency, only they're revoking the votes. Now they are waging a war against the state, against the public. They are not participating in voting. So you are revoking their citizen rights of the voting is not going to affect them. You have to give them the punishment, right? And the punishment is obviously death penalty is obviously a punishment, is an international rule, right? But in the certain cases, like the Supreme Court just said the Interior Ministry may revoke. Now, when the Supreme Court used the word may, this is a very debatable, right? The debatable token. Number second is demolishing housing. I think is a very effective, but the state of Israel should not be a discriminatory differentiate between the terrorists. I give you the one example. Last wave of the terrorist incidents, there was a Palestinian involved as well as the Israeli Arabs involved. But when the Palestinian involved, the Palestinian houses were demolished by the IDF. But Israeli Arab terrorist houses remain as the same. This is a discriminatory decision by the state. I think terrorist is a terrorist, whether the Israeli Arab or the Jewish or the Palestinian, their houses must be demolished equally under the law. The differentiate should not be differentiated. If the nationality rules, if the political parties or ruling party or anyone, they are differentiated and discriminated, this rule may revoke. So it means they think, okay, these certain people are come under these rules, revoke the nation, and the other people are doesn't. So I think this rule should be implemented without any discrimination.
Yeah, so without the phrasing of may leaving a question mark here. And in this respect, perhaps this is a good time to note that those terrorists are still receiving terrorist salaries from the Palestinian Authority. Gentlemen, we're taking a short break now, but when we get back, we expand our discussion to counterterrorism policies around the world. Maybe the term terror is becoming a bit too lenient. A short break, and we're back in a bit. Still with us, Noor Dahri, Dr. Naseer Alomari, and Colonel in the Reserves, Alon Eviatar. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. And if we needed to look for any other indication that our debate is also very timely as we speak, initial reports of a stabbing attack in the Tapur Junction in the West Bank. According to those initial reports, the alleged assailant has been subdued. We will, of course, continue to update you on that. We're staying on topic, but are expanding our debate a bit. But before we continue, let's take a listen to the latest remarks of American Senator Ted Cruz, of course, on the issue of revoking citizenship of terrorists. And we pick up the conversation right after.
It is my hope that this body will stand together as one in bipartisan unity to secure the borders and to change our laws to pass the legislation I'm introducing today to make clear that any American who takes up arms with ISIS has in doing so constructively renounced his or her American citizenship, so that the Congress can with one voice protect Americans here at home. This requires clear, decisive, unified action. And it is my hope that all of us will come together supporting such action, and that the President will submit to the authority of Congress seeking authorization to protect America against ISIS and to engage in a concentrated, directed military campaign to take them out.
Yeah, Senator T. Cruz. So, gentlemen, let's kickstart this part of the debate with another 30-second round each. And my question to you is the problem, as Dr. Alomari alluded to earlier, is in the definition of what is a terror act and who is a terrorist. Noor, please take the lead.
I think, yes, there's a more than 109 definition of terrorism, and each is a little bit contradiction from other. If you look at the Syria and Iran, and they have their own definition of terrorism. So I think there is a problem, there's a problem in the definition. And I think the international community must sit first, before the counterterrorism, they must sit together and find out a unique definition of terrorism that every Western countries or the Eastern country apply equally through the United Nations platform. Because of these problems rooted in a definition of terrorism, that terrorists use this type of definition where they have some lack of understanding and they are commit act of terrorism. Because sometimes other hands.
No, let's put a stop right here and pick up the debate in a split second. Dr. Alomari, your take, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I don't know why we need to define terrorism, by the way. It used to be neat. If you kill someone for their faith, it's terrorism. Now it's no longer that. And now it has become politicized. And then, the U.S., it used to be convenient. If it's like a Muslim or an Arab, you say, well, it's terrorist. Until 200 whites committed these horrible crimes against Muslims and Jews and gays, and all of a sudden it's not really terrorism. So that's another reason why we really don't need this. We need to deal with the roots of terrorism, put terrorists away, and take action against crime. That is how the way to do it, not to find a neat definition for terrorism.
Alon Eviatar, your take?
I will say that terror is has a clear definition. Terror is using violence to achieve political achievements. And while a democratic state has an insensitive situation like Israel, democratic state should do anything and use any tools to prevent it. I would say that internal terror could lead for a war, I would say internal war. So this is the main point for that.
And speaking of which, gentlemen, and please feel free to interact, domestic violence or domestic terrorism is posing new challenges in the U.S. For example, citing terrorism, court is now seeking a 15-year prison sentence over the January 6th riots on Capitol Hill. So should domestic terrorism and foreign terrorism be treated the same, Dr. Alomari?
Well, it's more horrible. I mean, these crimes that were committed against blacks and Jews here in the U.S. were horrible. 60 people were killed by some crazy person for some crazy reason. That is more horrific than anything that a terrorist coming from outside the U.S. has done. The January 6th attack on Congress, isn't that terrorism, destabilizing the state? I mean, what is Putin doing in Ukraine? You said achieving political gains through terrorism. Well, I would say that applies to what's happening in Russia today, and the invasion of Ukraine, according to your definition, is justified. You're trying to achieve political gains in Ukraine, as the Kremlin says. Denazification, and demilitarization of Ukraine. Well, all of these sound to me like, reasonable definitions for terrorism and a good cause to go after the Ukrainian people. Once again, this is a dangerous, slippery slope. It's political, and it was intended to be used for like Muslims and Arabs, and all of a sudden the West and Israel are having trouble.
A double-edged sword, so to speak. Noor Dahri, your take?
I think the violence is the part of the U.S. society, unfortunately. There's a very bitter truth. And arms smuggling through the Mexico and South American countries is easily infiltrated into the society. Domestic terrorism and foreign terrorism, there is no much difference, because domestic terrorist, if he is using the political goal to achieve, then definitely it comes under the definition of terrorism. And if his goal is not not achieve as a political goals, then maybe it's come to mass murder or something. But now it's in America, there is a ethno-nationalist. Now it comes under terrorism. And the people who are white supremacy, obviously they comes under terrorism because they are specifically targeting a different community and a different race to achieve their political goals. And definitely it should come under the terrorism and should deal equally by the state, by the media, as they behave against foreign terrorism.
And Alon Eviatar, as Dr. Alomari was suggesting, there are calls to define Russian actions in Ukraine as an act of terrorism, and as a consequence that the West should treat Russia as a terrorist sponsoring state of sorts. And also the Wagner Group, for example, is being dubbed a terrorist. Now, aren't we stretching the term terrorism a bit too much?
No, I think that it's a dangerous situation that lead us, or I would say there is a red line that we have to consider it. I would say that quite different reference that internal terror is quite different from external terror, because internal terror could lead for a civil war and for a collapse, if you want, of the society. And for that, it's quite different from external war, that its goal is just to lead for casualties and political achievements. But if the internal terror, you will not prevent it from the beginning, you can find yourself in the middle of a civil war. I want to mention that last year in Israel, we had, I would say, the first step for this bad process. And for that, I think that we have to make anything that we have in our tools, especially those legal steps, to prevent any option of this, I would say, bad or negative process. And I think that Israel, as a democratic state, should combine the legal steps or decisions and the operational decisions to make it clear and to prevent any option for, I would say, another models of those internal terrors.